Were dinosaurs warm-blooded or cold-blooded? What an interesting question. I will try to answer, but the problem with the answer is that there really isn't one at the moment. Mostly because we aren't really sure, though it is worth mentioning that modern research has shown that they likely were definitely more towards warm-blooded rather than cold-blooded. But to begin with, what does any of that even mean? What's warm-blooded and cold-blooded? Well, if you took your high school biology class, and I imagine most of you have, if you've, graduated high school, maybe some of you were younger, well, you'll learn about it. But we were taught that a warm-blooded animal is like us, where we maintain an internal body temperature that is generally higher than the environment around us. Cold-blooded animals, on the other hand, don't actually maintain their temperature internally, and it's dictated by the environment. Reptiles, for example, are generally cold-blooded. But here's the thing, from a scientific perspective, the terms warm-blooded and cold-blooded are kind of gross. Like, actual biologists don't even like to use them, because the problem is that there is a significant gray area in between these two phrases. It's one thing to say that this animal maintains a certain body temperature, this one is dictated by the environment, but then there's a whole bunch of other body temperature maintaining stuff in between, intermixed. Some are blends of the two, some do other things. Like, it's not just one or the other, it's not black and white. And as a result, calling something warm-blooded or cold-blooded is generally a really vague thing to say that doesn't actually help when it comes to analyzing how exactly the animal functions. There are more detailed definitions available, and we can get into all of them, but for our purposes, I'm just gonna keep things pretty basic for you, because we have to talk about the dinosaurs. The problem when it comes to determining whether or not the dinosaurs were warm or cold-blooded is, frankly, it's just really difficult for us to nail down their exact physiology beyond their skeletal structures. Because most of the soft tissue, well, some does sometimes get fossilized in very rare circumstances. For the most part, what we have left, if fossils exist at all, which I've already mentioned are insanely rare on their own, are the bones, or the fossilized version of them. Meaning that we don't have a heck of a lot to work with when it comes to looking at internal organs, their cardiovascular systems, their exact brain sizes, all sorts of stuff that we just can't do without a fully preserved specimen. Modern day animals, we have a really good idea of their layout because we can examine a dead body, a fresh dead body in their case, and study their anatomy in significant detail. But dinosaurs do not allow us this benefit. Their remains are simply too old. We don't have anything left to work with, so we have to do a lot of guesswork. And early on in the discussion, generally scientists believe that they were cold-blooded. But this is based purely on the fact that early on in dinosaur analysis, many believed they were simply big, dumb, dopey lizards. And since we thought of them as big lizards, we therefore assumed that they had the same kind of heat regulation systems of reptiles, namely that they were cold-blooded. But the problem with this is that, frankly, that analysis is just impossible for two reasons. For one thing, modern research has shown that dinosaurs were not simply just big lizards. They were often very fast, agile, active, and high energy. They didn't just dawdle around or chill and wait for prey or bask in the sun all day. No. They were acting very similar to, well, modern mammals in some cases, or, perhaps more accurately, modern birds. This is relevant because the other issue is that modern research has also shown that many dinosaurs dwelled in fairly cold environments in which a cold-blooded reptile would never be able to survive for any length of time, meaning that they absolutely had to be regulating their body heat somehow. So, based on that alone, it is safe to say that the vast majority of dinosaurs were some level of warm-blooded. But exactly how they were doing that, and how warm-blooded they were, is still up for debate, and we might never know the answer with 100% certainty. Many theories do exist regarding their exact methodology behind regulating their body temperatures, and it's still a very touchy subject, paleontologically speaking. Some argue that the non-avian dinosaurs were actually cold-blooded, but the avian ones were warm-blooded, dividing them based purely off of that. But there were plenty of non-avians that also dwelled in cold environments, so personally, in my non-expert opinion, I don't agree with that assessment at all. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm pretty sure they were all regulating their body temperatures, at least beyond the Triassic period. I can entertain the idea that perhaps earlier dinosaurs might not have had such well-rounded body temperature regulation systems, since they would have, evolutionarily speaking, still been very close to reptiles. But as time went on, they would have gotten more bird-like. And birds are warm-blooded. Birds actually have higher internal body temperatures than we do because they have very high metabolisms that generate a lot of heat, which they need for, the whole flying thing. Birds don't sweat, so they cool down by panting or fluttering their throat membranes to evaporate moisture, as well as wading in water to warm themselves up. Some birds are known to shiver like we do, while more social birds will huddle up together to share body heat. Either way, the point is that birds have to maintain a certain body temperature, and therefore it's fair to guess that most of the dinosaurs, especially the later ones, would have been pretty similar. Some argue that they would have been maybe a blend of the two, somewhere in that gray area I mentioned before. Not in the same category as birds in terms of warm-bloodedness, but definitely not outright cold. The argument is that they were neither cold nor warm-blooded in modern terminology, but had metabolisms that were different and very unique to them. Some argue they would have had low resting metabolic rates, which is kind of similar to reptiles, but they could have also had very high aerobic capacity, allowing for sustained high-energy activities. Size is also very relevant to this topic, because in terms of warm-bloodedness, there is a concept called gigantothermy, which is a phenomenon whereby large, bulky, ectothermic animals, cold-blooded animals, are more easily able to maintain a constant, relatively high body temperature just because of their size. They have a smaller surface area to volume ratio, meaning that a large sauropod, for example, would lose heat in the cold much slower than a small lizard. Some argue that this is relevant to the dinosaurs, but many resist it, pointing out that if things got too hot, well, how would they cool down? They had to be regulating themselves somehow. Plus, the other problem with this is that it's believed sauropods would have been eating a lot, all the time. And any degree of cold-bloodedness usually requires some degree of inactivity, just chilling, hanging out. And for a sauropod, that was not really something they would have done very often just because they had to eat. Granted, if they were cold-blooded, it meant they technically wouldn't have had to eat that much because they would have had very slow metabolisms. I mean, they would have had to eat a lot, still, but not as much as if they were warm-blooded. You see the problem here? The point is, when it comes to whether or not dinosaurs were warm-blooded or cold-blooded, the true answer is we have no friggin' idea, but they probably weren't outright cold-blooded. They probably weren't like lizards. They likely would have had a lot of things that allowed them to regulate their body temperature to some degree, and later ones, those evolutionarily even closer to birds, might have been outright warm-blooded, or very, very near to it, because of the very nature of dinosaurs, because of how many different kinds there were, many different species, different genuses all over the place. There may not be a single answer. There may be some dinosaurs that handled their body temperatures in completely different ways when compared to others. Smaller, more agile hunters, like velociraptors, probably were just straight up warm-blooded because they were so active and fast, whereas larger, chiller, more passive plant eaters might not have had that many regulatory methods when it comes to body temperature because they just never needed them. But again, it's hard to say exactly. And we probably won't ever know the answer unless, of course, we cloned them. But that's not really something that's still a bit of a ways off, I think. But you know, it's an option. I'm just saying it would answer a lot of questions. Just let the mad scientists do what they want. Okay, I'm just saying. It's a viable option. And with that, a special thank you goes to my Apex Predators, Arthur Roy, Metal for Life Guy, and Anti-Raven. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.